What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the iPhone SE 2020. I absolutely love this phone. It's a really good choice for anybody who wanted a smaller iPhone with a home button. I know a lot of people really love having a home button, and also this is extremely compact phone for people with smaller hands who want something that they can one hand and reach easily, and you don't have that hand strain. I absolutely love this phone in 2023 simply because of the price. It's $141 now, and this phone has a A13 chip, and the chip was an overkill when they put it in it, that year, but it's still holding up extremely well. This phone is blazing fast, but I even prefer this over the new SE, simply because this phone is extremely similar to the new one. It's like the new one has a faster chip and it has 5G, but my thing is I don't really care about 5G, and the chip on here is still extremely fast on here. So I want to start off with that. This phone is just blazing fast. So that's one thing that has always impressed me. It just doesn't lag, and it gets into applications extremely fast, and it's something that I always appreciated. So this is such a good deal for $141, simply because people were typically buying the iPhone 8 and stuff like that because they wanted the iOS 16 with a smaller body size and all that good stuff. But now you can just buy this and be perfectly fine. So I was playing, a few games on this device, and it's really impressive, the gaming performance on here. So if you want to game on this thing, it's really good. It can play PUBG at HDR Extreme. It keeps it 60 frames really well. So I'm just really impressed with the performance on here, guys. So we do, like I said, Apple A13 chip. Now the base model does have 64 gigs of internal storage, and then you also have 3 gigs of RAM, which this phone actually does a really good job of RAM management as well too. It keeps applications open pretty well. But one thing about gaming on here that I always found really enjoyable is, again, for like me with smaller hands, being able to game on this thing is just really comfortable. So it's extremely comfortable. I think the only downside to gaming is that the battery life isn't the best when you really game on this thing heavy. You can probably get around 3 hours of screen on time if you just straight up game on this thing, which isn't really that great. But like I said, performance wise, man, this thing is going to fly through games. It's just really impressive to me. All right, so next I want to talk about the screen on here. So this has a 4.7-inch display. It's a Retina IPS panel, and it is a 720p plus panel, and then it's 326 for the PPI. So it's a fairly sharp panel here. It's very colorful for an IPS panel. It's basically a high quality panel. I think it's the same pretty much display that you would find in the new SE, and it's also very sharp. So the icons and everything still look pretty good. So it's definitely not a bad screen at all. Again, Apple has moved to OLED. We know OLEDs are better, but it's somewhat decent, and like I said, very easy to one hand, very easy to reach. Let's talk about the design a little bit more. This is a glass and metal phone. It's IP67, dust and water resistant, and it feels premium in the hand. Basically, it's the old iPhone 8 design, essentially here, but like I said, it still feels premium. Hopefully they will update the design with the newer model. It's still the 2023 model or the 2022 model of the SE still has the same design. And yeah, it does look a little bit dated from the front with the chunky bezels and stuff like that. But a lot of people really will sacrifice that older design to have this home button, which I completely understand. It's very clicky. Touch ID works really well on here too for people who just hate Face ID. So I really like it. Now, one of the most surprising things about the SE is that it actually still has a pretty good camera. I think the only downside with the camera is that it only has one lens, so it's got a 12 megapixel standard. It shoots in 4K 60, and then you have a 7 megapixel selfie that only shoots in 1080p 30. But as you guys can see, the stills on the SE are actually still pretty good, and the video is pretty solid as well too. So it's not, the image quality is not bad at all. I actually think it's pretty good. But again, there's no ultra wide, there's no telephoto lens. So if you're somebody that just takes your phone out and does a point and click, then you'll really like this. But if not, then you probably want to get something else. But like I said, just looking at the stills, guys, this takes really good photos. So I'm pretty impressed with the image quality, really good dynamic range, great color, pretty good detail. I think it's pretty impressive for $140, right? You do have stereo speakers on the SE, which is pretty good. A little bit of distortion at max volume, but yeah, a little bit of distortion, but it's overall still pretty good, especially for the size. You actually get some pretty good bass on here, and the top speaker does do pretty good volume as well, just in case you cover it up. So yeah, so the speakers on here are actually not that bad. Now, lastly, let's go ahead and discuss the battery life performance on here. So battery life on here is really not that great. So that's the only thing with these smaller phones. So it has a very small battery. It's a 1,821 milliamp battery. It does actually have wireless charging too, which is pretty sweet. But the battery situation, you typically get around 4 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. And like I said, if you do heavy gaming, you can probably not, drop that down to around like 3 hours, basically. So you're definitely gonna want to either invest in a battery charger, right? A battery charging case or something like that. Because this phone can die very easily, but it's so cheap that you spend an extra $50 and get a battery charger case or something like that. I think it's well worth it, honestly. But this is a very impressive phone. I love the size. I love having the home button on here, and this thing is crazy powerful. It does a really good job with specs. I mean, with not specs, but with gaming. So I think very impressive phone for 141 bucks.